There's no two cases alike. It's a matter of luck. It's a matter of where the damage is.
Yeah.
Look at it with the lens of like, okay, I didn't do this to myself.
Right.
I'm not the reason that I'm sick.
Right.
And I'm not the reason if I don't get better if I do.
Hey, I'm Greg Grunberg, and welcome to Talk About It, the podcast where we focus on topics that everybody should be talking about, and hopefully they will be. Not only talking, but screaming about.
Epilepsy shouldn't keep you from doing anything that you want to do.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
While we will continue our focus on epilepsy, of course, we will also look at other health conditions and causes. Our goal is to knock down, drag out, and eliminate stigma and raise awareness. Each episode, you're going to hear from amazing advocates and champions. You will learn, as I will, about how we can all help to make a real difference.
Talking about it is important. It's all about connecting.
Talk about it.
Talk about it.
Talk about it. Talk about it. Thank you for talking about it.
Thank you for talking about it.
Talk About It is sponsored by Seizures Are Signs. Seizures Are Signs is dedicated to educating those living with or caring for someone with uncontrolled seizures about the importance of early diagnosis, recognition, and treatment. To learn more, please visit seizuresaresigns.com. Seizures Are Signs is made available by Jazz Pharmaceuticals. All right, so let's jump right into this episode of Talk About It. Hey, welcome to another episode of Talk About It. This one is really special, really personal, and I think going to be absolutely incredible. It's called a backdoor pilot, is what we call it in the business. You're not allowed to talk right now. I know you probably recognize who this is. I'm not going to say her name yet. Well, I will. Amanda Foreman. So I've been talking for years to my friends to deal with, just life. No, get out of my shot. That's my camera. And one of the people that I have been talking with forever is Mandy. We get together, we worked on Felicity together, and we were friends long before that. But she's always been there for me, whether she, I called her, I'm worried about Jake or whatever. Inevitably, it always just says, what's going on in your life? And you've always been that, don't say a word yet. You've always been this incredible pillar, just a friend, great friend that I can always talk to, okay? So it's been this journey, and we've always talked about what we're each going through. Me with Jake, our son, and Mandy with what she was going through, which you'll hear about soon. I thought, you've been talking about this. Why not talk about it? Like, I'm talking about epilepsy. Maybe you should talk about your condition and the other people that have it, which are millions of people. So for all you Felicity fans, you're going to love this. We're going to start the show as Sean and Meghan. Here we go. Meghan, can I talk to you for a second?
What?
I have a great idea.
Oh.
What?
No, I mean, they're always so good, so keep going.
Okay. No, but this one's really good. This isn't like the others, right?
No.
This is okay. So here's the thing. People, and I really think this is a good idea. And I talked to, Felicity about this, and Noel likes the idea.
Oh, good. Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go on,
okay.
please.
No, I really need you to, okay.
I'm listening.
Okay. It's a way to encourage people. I think it's good if people talk, right? If they talk about something, I've come up with a product to help people talk.
Like a mouth? Like
No.
vocal cords?
No, not a. Are you being?
I just love your idea, so break it.
Okay, all right. So
is it as good as Smooth A's?
Smooth A's was good. Smooth A's was good. This is almost as good. It is almost as good.
Okay,
this is
go ahead.
Not as good as the edible pens.
No, oh God, what is? So bring it.
Okay,
let's go.
So it's a handheld device.
Yes.
Much like a telephone, but we'll never
Sure.
have phones in our hands.
No, ever.
But it's a handheld device, and you're able to talk. Anytime you want to talk to somebody, you can talk even while you're walking. So what I was thinking is calling it a talkie-walkie.
Oh, wow. Or a mini tape recorder.
Well, no, not like what Felicity uses.
Not like what Felicity uses in her room
no,
to talk to Sally? No,
it
something
would be like,
completely...
Dear Megan. No, that wouldn't be that. I'm talking about like it's a little handheld thing, and so you're walking and you're talking, but it's a talkie-walkie. And that way, if you wanted to express yourself, because it's always good. Don't you agree it's good to talk?
Sure.
talk about things?
I do think it's good to talk about it. Let's do it.
Is this working at all? It's not working in character.
Is this thing on?
Is this thing on?
I thought it was working in character.
I thought it was really good.
Yeah.
It was really good. You know what's interesting is you can be really mean very simply. You don't have to, because I envisioned it as I was driving here. I was like, or we'll do a Sean Meghan sketch or whatever. Ken, who does talk about it with us, said, let's do that. It'd be great. And I was like, all right. And then I'm thinking, I would be like, hey, I want to talk to you. And you'd be like, what? You don't need to do that. There it is. Okay.
It's right here.
All right.
But I can be a nice person.
You are a nice person. I love you so much.
Sometimes.
How about these two?
Oh.
Or those two.
Do you remember what episode this was? I'm trying to remember. This was us a lot.
Were we in the therapist's office? No.
No,
I have
that was
no
our
idea.
Whose apartment that was? That was the apartment that had that weird kitchen thing.
It was the girl's apartment.
Girl's apartment, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
That was in the therapist's office.
I look good.
You do. You look a lot
You look
like Jake.
like Pippi Longstocking.
I was.
You had that.
I was
and the
German
love.
for some time.
Yeah. Now,
you.
So if people want to know more about us on Felicity, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag, which I kind of did on that live on social media.
Hi.
We're doing a podcast for Felicity, and we're both co-hosting, and it's going to be really fun. And we're bringing in friends, but you're going to see Mandy's on a lot of episodes, and I'm on a lot of episodes, with bringing in our old friends.
Yeah.
This was a great group, and I was the one who started that hairstyle. That's exactly that rhinoceros hairstyle.
There it is.
That's exactly what you were talking about.
Oh yeah. I swear to God, I looked in the hair makeup trailer one day. I'm like, all of these guys have the same hairdo, and I thought, and someday we're going to look back at this and go, that's how the guys wore their hair. And
Well,
it's
talk about
true.
hair. They always had fun with your hair.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, that's great. What a great character. Both of our characters.
Yeah, it was super fun.
And for people that need to know, so we were really good friends before the show.
Yes.
And so it was awkward to say the least. It was weird. It was weird when all of a sudden we were like, oh, we're going to actually do this. This is awesome.
But it was great. I mean, it was such a good way to get us all. I mean, they were always
Yes.
They were always tasked with getting us all in the same room. And so that was a really good way of making sure that we were always at least together. And if not together, then there was a reason for us all to sort of interact with each other. And it gave us a storyline, which we didn't really have so much.
No. And the moments when we were all together were some of the best. I mean, like the painting and the, all that stuff, dancing, whatever, like fun. Yeah. The fact that we're here, sitting here on Talk About It, and to bring just everybody up to speed. So here's, it started with the epilepsy community, obviously. There's such a stigma attached to it. It's like people don't talk about it. They don't talk about their emotions and all the stuff that's wrapped around it.
Right.
And a lot of people don't even want to talk about the condition. They don't want to talk about having the condition. I might not get hired. I might get fired. People don't think I want to go on a date. There's so much involved. Yeah.
I didn't know that about epilepsy. I wouldn't think twice.
Even with relatives, there have been people in our family that are like, so when you're not going to leave Jake here alone? And you're like, oh. And I understand because God forbid he has a seizure.
Yeah, that I understand more than the unwillingness to engage with someone who's got epilepsy.
Oh, no. There's a willingness to engage, but it's like, like when do you first tell somebody you have a condition on the first date?
Right.
Do you wait? You just don't want to, first of all, we don't want any condition to define us.
Right.
That's not who we are, right? Anyway, I have known about your condition for a long time, and you have always been, to me, just always talked about it. There were times at the beginning you were like, don't tell anybody or whatever. The fact that you're sitting here right now and just like, let's talk about this. Tell everybody what you have and your condition. Let's talk about it.
Okay, let's talk about it. Exclamation point, Greg's face in the corner.
Well, look, there's room for your face right here.
I have MS, which is multiple sclerosis. And
That's fun.
It's so much fun.
How?
Greg.
Tell me.
It is so much fun.
So, first of all, you and I always deal with everything with humor.
Yes.
This is the way we deal with it in our house. So if you're watching this and you have MS and you're like, how dare they joke about this?
Well, listen, it comes in stages of acceptance. And for me, for sure, it took me years. And I didn't even have any effects from it. But just the mental hurdle of, because you don't know. And the fact is, like, we could get hit by a bus, not in here probably, but
This is North Hollywood, so you never know.
Things are crazy.
Yeah, things are crazy. It could come through here.
So
let's go back to when you were first diagnosed, though.
All right.
You said you didn't feel the effects of it. So
No.
what gave you the indication? Was it just a normal checkup?
No. So when I was in my 20s, I had this really active, like 3 days, like rollerblading and running and yoga and doing all this stuff. And at the end of the 3 days, I woke up one morning and I was like numb from the waist down, like pins and needles. Like I could still walk and everything, but like it was very weird. And I didn't know what it was. And I had seen Annette Funicello on TV in like a wheelchair and like unable to talk. And it was so traumatizing. And I thought, I have MS.
Is that was the first place that your mind went? Was,
yes.
Oh, no.
Because I'd seen her on TV and my thought when I saw her was, I'd rather die.
Wow.
Yeah. So I woke up with these pins and needles and I went to my doctor and I said, I think I have MS. He goes, yeah, my wife thinks she has prostate cancer.
Yeah,
Please.
seriously.
You don't. I'm like, all right. So he sends me to a neurologist who does an MRI of my spine and it comes back fine. Nothing in there. And he said, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think you have a virus in your spine. I'm like, well, what is that? And he goes, it's just, I don't know. And I go, when's it going to go away? And he goes, I don't know, tomorrow, next week, never. I'm like, never is not an option.
Yeah.
So I go to my chiropractor and she puts me on this cleansing diet of like brown rice and vegetables and Bragg's liquid aminos, which is a good thing to know about. Bragg's liquid aminos. They're great.
Yeah, it's a good a low sodium substitute.
It's better for you than soy sauce. But so she put me on that and I did it for like 3 weeks and my symptoms cleared up. Like everything just cleared up. And then I went on a terrible date and with this guy and he was like, oh, you have MS. And I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, he didn't do an MRI of your head. He's a radiologist, by the way. Yeah.
Oh.
So I'm like, I hate you.
Right.
And then went home. And so I think he's terrible, but it sticks in my brain. But then years go by and then I'm on Felicity. I do the whole thing. And then when that wrapped, and I'm fine. And then when that wrapped.
Never came back?
But
all that time that we worked on Felicity?
Correct. No.
Never.
Nothing. It's called relapsing remitting. So I had an attack and then it remitted, which meaning it cleared up on its own. I didn't do anything. And I wasn't diagnosed. So then when I finished with Felicity, like I think it was the first year that we were done and I had pilot season, which is going in for all those auditions. And, it's a very grueling thing. And I was testing and stressful. Yeah. And at the end of pilot season, all during pilot season, I had a flu. And I kept taking wellness, echinacea, and golden seal, and all these which turns out not great because they boost your immune system. And MS is an autoimmune disease.
Oh.
So you really don't want a stronger immune system because your immune system, if it's sparked, can attack the wrong thing. That's what autoimmune disease is.
Got it.
So like with scleroderma, I think it's the connective tissue. With MS, it's the myelin sheath around the nerves. Mm-hmm. So at the end of that pilot season, when my flu went away, my feet were numb.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh, this is not great. So I called my friend's mother, who happened to be a neurologist specializing in MS. It was so crazy. And she was like, I think you should go get an MRI. So I go to this doctor, the head of neurology, and we do an MRI. And then I go back on that diet. My feet clear up. I'm fine. 6 months later or 4 months later, I go in for my results. And
why do the results take so long?
Because it was 10 million years ago. I really don't know.
Okay.
I just didn't even think about going back because I was fine.
Yeah. And if there was something major, an emergency, they would have let you know. You would have thought.
You would think.
Yeah.
So I don't think he'd even looked at them. So I went back in for my results and I'm like sitting in his office and it's dark and he's like, oh, let's take a look. And he like turns off the lights. Because in those days when I was a girl,
you had to be naked with your doctor to get your results.
So he flips on the lights, the light boxes, and he puts the scans up and he's like, huh. And I go, what? And he goes, well, you see my brain. He goes, you see those white spots? I go, yeah, what is that? He goes, that's MS. And I almost he grabbed my arm.
You were alone.
With him.
No, but I mean, you didn't go with anybody.
No, because I thought it was fine, because I felt fine.
Of course, and months had gone by.
Months had gone by. And so he's holding my arm. I'm like, you're hurting me. And he's like, and I just lost my mind. And he's like, it's fine. You're fine. I have clients who play tennis at 70 years old. There's medicine now. There didn't used to be.
Right.
I couldn't hear any of that. I was distraught. And this is what I mean when I say it's a process.
Yeah.
Because it was so overwhelming, and all I could think was, I'm going to be Annette Funicello. I'm going to wind up in a wheelchair. Yeah. I'm going to die unable to swallow.
We also worked with someone on Felicity.
Oh, yeah, Terry
Garr.
Yeah.
And saw her struggle to get up from the desk and all that stuff.
And,
who did you have, by the way, in your support circle? Like, who did you immediately, let's go step by step. Like, you hear that news, you're devastated.
So I hear that news. I think I'm going to fall, but he grabs my arm so hard that it hurts. Yeah. And he hands me antidepressants and goes, take these. I'm like, I'm not taking pills. So, and he gives me a prescription for this medication. And I go to my car, and the first person I call is my friend Laura Dern.
Yep.
And the reason I called her first was to ask her about learning transcendental meditation, because she had been doing that for so long with David Lynch. And I'm like, I want to learn. She's like, yes, here's my teacher and this woman, and gave me the number. And then I called my ex-boyfriend, who's still a really good friend of mine, who at the time was still a really good friend of mine. And I told him. And so that was where it started. I don't remember who. I'm sure I told friends.
Yeah.
But I couldn't eat. I couldn't function. I spent 2 solid weeks with my ex-boyfriend, John. He didn't leave my side once, which to his immense credit. And we'd be like,
Were you depressed? Did you?
I couldn't function. I was so beyond. And he kept going, you're fine though. I'm like, but I'm not fine, and I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And anything can happen.
And you know how quickly this could deteriorate.
You don't know anything.
Idea.
Yeah.
And by the way, you're an actor. Right. And a good one. And people want to work with you. And you're thinking in your head, oh boy, I don't want this. If people know that I have MS, or if I can't walk across a room. Yeah.
Hi.
I know.
So,
this is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So
that's me right there that's me. Well, that's my big face.
Let's talk about it with Greg.
We are.
Coming up on Talk About It.
I mean, I've come around to not being as upset, but it's still upsetting. Yeah. When I can't do something, I get past it, but my life is definitely smaller than it was before. Hey, it's Mandy, and I just wanted to break into this interview to remind you that if you or someone you love has been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, don't despair. There is a ton of hope out there. Find yourself a neurologist who specializes in MS, ask them lots of questions, be a good advocate, and look up mssociety.org for lots of useful information and support. Good health is worth fighting for. And now, back to the show.
At least you're talking about it back then. At least you were talking to somebody. You had to.
Well, yeah. I just didn't want, and I still don't want people concerned. It's kind of a drag. And
I'm gonna compare this to something so trivial, but it's interesting. When we're working, when we're on set, and I'm sure you're the same way, and someone says, oh, I want to come visit you. It's the worst. It's like, we're doing a job. I don't want to be the center of attention. If my character is in the scene, great.
Right.
I'll kill it. I'll steal the scene. No problem. You and I will be funny, and then whatever. But I don't want the spotlight on me. I don't want to be the problem. I don't want to be the thing that people are worrying about.
Yeah.
I just recently, I'm shooting this thing right now, and I had a walk and talk, and I have the worst arthritis in my right knee, and I'm going to need full knee replacement.
Well, you know what? Do it.
No, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But I need to be able to do it when I'm not shooting.
Yes.
And the recovery is at least a couple months, whatever.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But my point is...
That's going to be another podcast. Talk about knee
talk about your knee.
Talk about arthritis. Exactly. Oh, my God. We should do that.
Yeah.
Calcification in the knee joint on this episode of Talk About It.
So, but my point is that I talked to JJ, just JJ's show, right? And JJ was like, look, I don't want you limping. And I said, well, if I am, it's going to be part of the character. He's like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. So, you can make it. I look at your face. Like, you're like, you don't want, and this is the crutch that you hate, I'm sure.
No, I mean, they say that, but that's not been the case for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be fine. It's like, but it isn't.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, JJ is a different case probably, but like,
yeah.
Usually it's not.
And
the case.
You also don't know.
And especially for not a main character, because they're going to have to change their, I mean, it did happen once. I did get cast. But when I got this call, and it was like out of the blue, of course, as always, and so nice. And my manager was like, they have a job for you. I'm like, oh, that's great. When? It's here, this time. Okay, great. And we hang up, and I went, wait a minute. And I call back, I go, wait, what am I doing? And he goes, oh, yeah, I got to look at the character. Oh, she's a woman. She has MS. She walks with a cane, but she's okay with it. Nobody knew.
What?
My manager did not know.
Oh, wow.
And I was limping, but nobody knew. I would just say, oh, I have a knee issue, or I have a this issue, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I had frozen shoulders.
So it's just a coincidence that the character had MS?
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm like, okay.
Why didn't I go out for that?
I didn't even audition. That's the thing.
Yeah, of course, because they like working with you. Yeah.
Because they knew me. And so I'm like, I couldn't believe, I was so freaked out. And
were you thinking someone on maybe in the writing staff knows?
There's no way anyone could have.
Wow.
So I told my manager at the time, and he was like, oh my God. And I said, I go, send me the script. So they sent me the script, and I'm like, I can do this. This is great. But then there's one scene that's a flashback. And in the flashback, she has to like run in the place, run down these stairs. And I'm like, I can't run down
I
stairs.
couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I had to call the casting director and tell her about this. And I lost it. I'm like, I'm going to tell you I have this thing, and I'm not going to. She goes, no, it's okay. I have something too. I have things too. Like, I have this, and this going on, and you don't have to worry about it, and they'll shoot around it. And I'm like, okay. And they were really gracious. And because on the day, I'm like, you guys got to cut away when I'm going down these stairs, because I can't go down the stairs. And they did, and it was great, and it was fine.
Yeah. When you were playing that character with MS, was it like hard to do or easy?
We didn't. It wasn't a discussion in the episode. It was the hardest part for me was my shoulder was frozen and it really hurt. So the wardrobe fitting was hard. No, it was just.
How are you now? Like, does your shoulder freeze up? So for people that just understand, like, it affects everybody differently, or is there consistent things with MS?
It affects everybody differently, and that's the thing. Like, that people don't understand. Like, you can have it and never have. You can have like 2 attacks, and then it can never come back. You can have a really bad attack when the younger you are. If you have a bad attack, the greater the odds are that your myelin sheath will remyelinate.
And you'll bounce back.
And so you won't have lasting effects. I mean, there is so much debate about it, but I know personally 3 different people that have this, and none of us are the same. And then you look at someone like Selma Blair, who has it completely differently than I do, or Terry Garr, who has it completely differently.
Yeah.
I mean, it's because it's such a big pipeline. I mean, your whole brain, your whole spinal column, your neck. Like
is it inflammation?
No, yes, I think it is.
I think there is inflammation involved, because I know the pipeline is very promising.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, there are. Look, I mean. So anyway, the nerve endings, the nerves are everywhere, and it just depends where in your body the damage is. So if the damage is going to affect your eyesight, if it's going to affect the way you walk, if it's going to affect your bladder, if it's going to affect, it's different for everybody.
Well, that's the same as epilepsy. I mean, the seizures are a seizure if you have a tonic-clonic seizure, a big seizure, or an absence seizure or whatever. It's still the brain. So it depends on where in the brain you have that effect, or in this case, where in your nerve endings. Right? Because, some people, it does affect them in different ways.
It's very different for everybody. I mean, even like for me, like my right leg is super stiff, so it doesn't bend back. But some people have a lot of weakness in their legs. So
what do you mean it's super stiff? Like
if I were standing up in this with my legs, I can't do that with my right leg.
What happens when you try?
Nothing. I'm like,
Are you just
it's
lazy?
I thought we weren't going to talk about that.
Sorry.
I thought we were going to talk about everything else.
Again, we joke. I joke
About-
because I love. No, but because like my leg, there's certain things with my arthritis in my knee I can't do. So it feels like you're trying and it's painful.
It's just, you know what it is? It's like they call it clonus, I think.
Clonus, okay. Doesn't matter if you get it right or wrong.
Yeah, I might have got it wrong. But it's like there's just the signal to do this. The signal is straightening it as opposed to bend. I mean, I can bend it if I turn it to the side and do that, but it's just, it's.
But what happens if you were to fall on your knee and it bends that way? Would it be painful?
I probably wouldn't fall on my knee. I would probably fall to the side, which I've done on my right shoulder.
But when I see you doing stuff, it's like, it doesn't stop you from doing anything.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like my friend has this house in Hollywood and the steps going up to his house, there's no rail and it's pitch black. I mean, even he is like, oh my God, I've almost bitten it like 50 times. And I'm like, yeah. So I made it up his steps and made it down. He had to Sherpa me down because I'm like, there's no rail, you know?
You were like Brady Bunch with the mules.
Stopped at base camp.
Yeah, exactly. I had to regroup at base camp and then head back
Would you like
down.
some jerky? We're halfway there.
So it's like, I mean, it does make me think about things, or even like the writer's strike.
Yeah.
Like, I'd love to go pick it, but I can't walk 7 miles. Like, it's just too much for me. And I tend to not use a cane because if I'm walking a dog, I will. But sometimes it just gets in the way. And I do a lot of physical therapy and I do all of that stuff. And so I mean, I can function. I live alone, you know.
I just have so many questions about so many conditions and all of this. MS being one that I just find, I don't think it's the day-to-day, the different aspects of it, the social aspects of it, the medical aspects of it, this and that.
There's so much to it.
Yeah.
Especially for me, the way that now, I mean, I've come around to not being as upset, but it's still upsetting.
Yeah.
When I can't do something, like, it's upsetting, you know? I get past it, but my life is definitely smaller than it was before.
And how about how the world treats you? Like, do you catch people like not knowing how to talk to you about it, or?
Well, I don't walk around with a sign. So sometimes generally people are so nice. And the last thing I want is attention on me. The last thing I want is to be looked at. Oof. But when people see me, and especially it's weird, valet parkers, they're so nice. They're so nice.
Well, you're also very attractive. They're like, hey.
I know how they are.
Right.
I know what they want.
Let me show you something in the back seat here. I noticed as I was pulling your car up.
Yeah, but they're really nice, and people are generally.
That's funny that you say, because
they're just really kind, and they're just like, oh, take your time, and,
right?
Oh, let me pull the car up for you, and like, and I don't need them to, and I don't ask them to, but they see me walking up to the car, and they're like, stay there. I notice it with that because they're in a position to one-on-one come in contact with me, and they see that they are affecting what happens next. Yeah. And they're always very kind about it. They're not like, come on, hurry up.
I know. I just, I'm just saying, like, as
no tip for you. Exactly. You, my dear, get a dog.
When we were in Arizona for the All-Star game. We got invited just to go to the All-Star game, and we're there. And Jake, because of the heat, I guess, we walked from the hotel.
Heat's the worst for MS too, by the way.
The heat is
the worst.
Yeah.
Like anybody with MS will say that. They'll say, oh, God, I hate getting hot. Overheated is the worst. Anyway, go on.
So it must be similar. It's the brain, right? So febrile seizures will happen when you have too high of a fever or whatever. And we're in Arizona, and the hotel was like a block and a half away. And we're walking from the hotel with the whole family. And Jake had a seizure. And I was freaking out. And I was like, hey, and a cab pulls up, and I said, I need you to take us to and the cab driver looks at me and he goes, he's having a seizure? No way.
What the hell is that reaction?
My son is having a seizure on the sidewalk. This guy will not help us get to an emergency room or back to the hotel to air conditioning. I couldn't carry him. It was it was so hard.
Here's my
I was furious.
hypothesis of what that is. If something, God forbid, happened in his car, he's then potentially liable. Are you going? Listen, this is
No, but it wasn't a
EMTs.
discussion like that. It was.
No,
you see you having a seizure? No. And I was like, oh
but
my
but it
God.
like EMTs, they get sued,
Yeah.
and he's not even an EMT.
Look, when Jake has had seizures at school,
I'm not excusing him.
No,
I'm
I
just
get
saying.
it.
I wonder if that's what that was.
I'll get a call when he was in elementary school and junior high. I'd get a call. I've told you this, Nick. And I go to the school, and Jake's laying there in a pool of blood because he hit his chin, and they won't touch him because of that. The teachers don't want to touch him because maybe his neck is broken or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't know. And and I'm not.
Well, I think that speaks to the importance of what this show is for, because if I'm just putting myself in that driver's, I don't know anything about this. No. You know, like, I don't know is he going to die?
That's
and I
Is he going to
100%.
die in my car?
Yeah, and I have to
No,
live with that
absolutely.
experience, and like, this is just like,
Yeah.
I'm just trying to pick up people and take
But
them.
if you had experienced the thousands of seizures that we've seen,
Right.
and if you knew how someone with MS is just nothing different, it's just a little bit. It might take them a couple extra seconds to get in the car, whatever. I'm just saying there is. Like, it just shouldn't be scary, and that's what this is all about. You're 100%.
Yeah.
This is it.
But did you say he has epilepsy, or did you say he had a seizure?
Oh, it was clear. He was still seizing.
So did you say he has epilepsy?
Yes, I did. I said, he has epilepsy. It's a seizure. I just need to get him to air conditioning. I was like begging the guy.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and Elizabeth was like, forget him. Let's go. It was an emergency situation.
Yeah.
And I'm like looking for someone else. And it's the All-Star game, so it's packed. Tons of people walking around videotaping now because they recognize it's the worst. It was the worst. Yeah. That and also Disneyland. It happened at Disneyland once. Disneyland was incredible. The people at Disneyland are amazing.
God.
But the people there seeing you hold your son having a seizure and they're using their phones to videotape, it's just horrible. And it's a misunderstanding.
Coming up on Talk About It.
You got to keep going in your life. That's all you can do.
Yep.
And know that no two people are the same. So my experience will be very different than somebody else, especially if they get diagnosed today, because there are so many options.
Yeah. Just wanted to break into the interview just for a second to emphasize and put a finer point on how important it is to talk about it. Mandy is talking about it right now, but if you heard what I heard when she first found out her diagnosis, it was scary and she was freaked out, and she talked to her doctor, she talked to her friends, she talked to her boyfriend. She wasn't afraid to lean on others. It's so important. You're not alone. And when I say you're not alone, it doesn't mean you're not alone in your diagnosis. There are other people that have the condition that you've just been diagnosed with. No, that is true, but you're not alone in the people that care about you and that want to be there for you, even if it's just to listen. You need to let it out, don't hold it in, and talk about it. All right, I'm going to continue talking about it with one of my favorite people in the whole world, Mandy Foreman.
Can we just circle back to Disneyland for just 1 second?
Sure.
Guess what? One of the things I love about you, and you know this,
Yeah.
is you're like, you ask for what you want. You're like, you ask for what you want.
Oh, yeah.
You're like, you want it? Ask for it. All they can say is no. So I remember.
This happens, by the way, Nick, all the time. Like
We have this conversation.
I'll call Mandy. I'll be like, we're talking. What's going on? Oh, I'm thinking about doing this talk show thing, but they won't send a car for me, whatever.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. This is Austin.
Same thing. Mandy's like, tell us.
So, so this is a separate thing, but we were going to Austin for this Hulu, like, Felicity-reunion thing. And I called Greg. I'm like, are you going to go? And he's like, I don't know. I mean, if they'll send a car, I'm waiting for this.
Just a car to the airport.
Yeah. He's like, I want to wait and see if they have a car. And I'm like, I didn't get a car. And he goes, well, if they give me a car, I'll do it. But otherwise, I'm not. And I'm like, I didn't get a car. So he calls me back 5 minutes later and he goes, oh, yeah, okay, so I got a car. I'm like, you got a car? So I call my manager. I'm like, hey, I want a car. And she's like, oh. I go, yeah, I want a car. So can you call and tell them that I want a car? And she goes, yes, I'll tell them you're not being a diva, but you just want a car.
You're like, no, Greg didn't do it that way.
And I said, hold on a minute. I said, I'm not being a diva. And that's the thing. I go, we're women.
Yeah.
We are women. And so we are used to apologizing for asking for the very basic thing that Greg has no problem asking for.
Exactly.
And I said, so please don't say she's not being a diva. Just say she wants a car.
Yeah.
I want her to have a car.
Yeah. So
And so
people
that's what
know
happened.
we weren't getting paid to go to this thing.
No.
So
But
getting out of
even if we
bed.
were.
First of all, I don't get out of bed for less than no. Getting out of
He and Linda
bed, go to the
Evangelista.
airport, leaving my family, leaving my son who has a condition, my wife being alone. It happens all the time, but we always talk about it. We're always like,
Yeah,
and
talk
by
about
the way,
it.
inevitably, whenever I leave town, I'll get a call in the morning, say Jake just had a seizure, and and it's just inevitable. If it's weird that it's inevitable, but it is. It's just one of those things. The least they can do, so I don't have to park my car at the
No,
airport.
but that's so. But the very first time I noticed it
Yeah.
was when we were on Felicity. It was our year 2. We had just become series regulars, and Greg is like, "I'm going to Disneyland with my family," and I'm like, "Oh, cool." He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to get a guide to take us around, because when you get a guide at Disneyland, you don't wait in line.
Nope.
You go in the back.
Yep.
You're shepherded around this park, and
Exactly.
you don't
VIP coming
it's
through.
VIP. Like, you don't mingle with the hoi polloi. Like, you are like doing your own thing.
Exactly.
So Greg is
Corn
like.
dog, always. They have it right at the ready in their jacket. Corn dog.
So Greg's like, yeah, I'm going to Disneyland. I'm going to get a guide. I'm like, you're going to get a guide? He goes, yeah, I'm going to tell him. I'm like, what are you going to tell him? What are you talking about? He goes, I'm going to tell him I'm on this show. I'm a series regular. I don't want to get mobbed. And I'm like, mobbed? Dude, like 5 people watch the show. And P.S., we're barely on it. And he freaking got a guide to take him around.
Yes, I did.
Yes, he did.
Hey, if
And
you
it
don't
was
ask, you don't get.
That's right.
A great lesson. And I'm like, I always think of that. I'm like, Greg, he just asks.
Okay, but does
I
that
want
translate?
a little bit of Greg in me.
Okay,
That's what she said.
That's what. Whoa! Let's get back to. Oh, stop!
My hair is so blonde.
I know. I was
What's
looking
up
at
with
that.
that? It's
Yeah.
weird.
Here's the thing, though: is
Oh, it's not.
How
That's just the
does it
picture.
relate to this?
Yes.
So do you ask for things you normally wouldn't? Do you just go like if you're going to predict, I'll give you an example. Like you get invited somewhere and they're like, well, no, I mean, you'll either park off the lot. Like if you're going to go to an audition, we don't do that anymore. Everything's on Zoom. But is it like, will you think in advance and say, okay,
Yes.
yeah, so those accommodations are little things.
100%. Because parking is the biggest drag. Even when I'm going to meet somebody for lunch or dinner, I get there super early and I circle the block. And if I can't find a spot, and generally I like to go to valet parking, places where there's valet. And if not, I'll circle the block. If I can't find anything, I'll drive. This has never happened, but this is always my plan. I usually find something. But my plan is, okay, then I'll drive like 5 blocks away, park, and call an Uber.
Oh, smart. That way you get dropped
Just so
off
I
at
don't
the
have
door.
to, and I don't have to pay, $50.
I love that. Okay, so now we've come to the point where it's just inevitable. You have to pretend like I just called you up. You have experience with MS.
Yes.
I just found out I was diagnosed.
Yes.
What do you tell somebody who just found out, having gone through all the... And by the way,
Yes.
this is why your podcast, talking about it, is going to be so valuable, because there's so many different questions I have about medications and the homeopathic stuff and all that. We've discussed that over the years. But that's for another day with different... You have Jamie Lynn Sigler on. You have this person, that person. I mean, there's a lot of people that you can talk to this about, other patients and things. But... I get this question all the time, and I'm kind of the red phone for a lot of people. And I tell people, like, someone will call me and go, a really good friend of mine, and they'll always preface it with like, she's a really big agent, or she's a great producer,
Wow.
or he's
all the agents have epilepsy now?
No, but I mean, inevitably, I'm like, I don't care who this person is.
Right.
I don't care if they're a bus driver. I don't care who they are. I honestly were like, give them my phone number now, because we didn't have anybody to talk to. And the first person, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, the first thing that I tell people is, it's going to be okay. I don't know what level of okay that's going to be for you. It's still not okay for us. Jake's living well with it, but he has. So what do you tell people when people are watching this, people are listening to this right now? What would you tell somebody who just got diagnosed?
I would say, how are you doing now? If they're having in the midst of an attack, I mean, hopefully they've got a doctor. So first find a doctor.
Yeah.
If they're lucky enough to have insurance, it's such a minefield. Like I think about how lucky we are to have the insurance that we have and the access to medications, the access to emergency. There's a medication, basically a steroid drip, and it cuts down your attack. Like it just cuts it out. I didn't even know it existed for years. So first I would say, are you in the midst of having an attack? get the doctor to prescribe it. The nurse will come to the house, or you'll have to go to a hospital. That's number one, to take down that attack. And then I would say go get yourself on some medicine. And I say that having not been on medicine for about 10 years because I fell down a wellness rabbit hole where there's a pervasive thought of, well, you can heal yourself. Your body knows how to do this. And I'm not saying that's not true.
Yeah.
But it's luck of the draw. If you have a mild enough case, like I did for years, where it would just resolve itself. But at a certain point, I think everyone should be on medicine. There's no harm in going down the rabbit hole of wellness, but just be on medicine.
Yeah.
And then go do your hypnosis. Go do your...
I was going to say, why are
all
they
of
mutually
that.
exclusive? I mean, these are all therapies.
I'll tell you why. Because there is a belief, and I say this for myself, and I couldn't ever tell anybody to take medicine if they don't want to. But my experience was I had a really, really bad attack, really bad, that lasted for a month. I didn't take any because I was pregnant, and I didn't think you could take these steroids. Turns out I was wrong. Of course, my doctor didn't tell me that, which is a mistake, and I fired him. But after that resolved, the attack went away, but it was a month of like the worst thing I'd ever been through. Anyway, I started seeing this naturopath, and her attitude towards medication was, I kept saying, I feel like my leg is like getting stiffer and stiffer. And she'd go, I mean, you're doing all the diet stuff. You're doing all the thing. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe you're the kind of person who needs medicine. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
Which is a super loaded thing to say.
Yeah.
When you're terrified.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, no, I'm not that person. I do not. Now, I don't know had I started medication, because I'd gone off the medicine they first prescribed to me because it was a once-a-day injection. It really bothered my skin. Like I really got really bad lipoatrophy from it because I don't have a lot of fat. You're supposed to do it into fat. Anyway, I couldn't do it. And instead of my doctor saying, let's try this other thing, I just didn't do it. And he'd go, come on, please take your medicine. And I wouldn't. And then I went to this naturopath and thought, oh, I don't need medicine because she's saying I don't.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is get on some medicine
Yeah.
because it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
It will probably stop your whatever disease you have from progressing or progressing as badly as it would. And also, P.S., do change your diet.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with like cutting out sugar, and it's hard to do.
It's the same in the epilepsy world. I'm
Yeah.
telling you, it's like poison. Sugar is just
sugar's
Jake,
the worst.
Yeah, Jake doesn't have any simple sugar. He won't touch. You know that, Nick. I mean, he won't touch bread. He won't touch potatoes. Salads like crazy. He has good carbs, but he will not have any of that.
Yeah, that naturopath was her whole thing was no sugar, no wheat, no dairy, no soy. And it sounds like that's nothing, but there's nothing left. But there is a lot. But like sugar's in everything, and I eat sugar now. I'm like 80-20 on that. But it's. So there's nothing wrong with doing any of that natural stuff.
What about?
It's just I would take medicine.
Yeah,
That's what I would say.
again, what about the idea of Googling? Because when you are faced with something, only the bad stuff rises to the top.
I know people say that. I think you just have your wits about you. I mean, I Google everything all the time.
So do we. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I know that's not me. I mean, you just have to be sensible about it.
Yeah.
Because you just have to be sensible. Yeah, sure, Google what happens with MS, but know that there's no two cases alike. It's called a snowflake disease. I wrote a pilot called Snowflake about a woman with MS, and that's because it's completely different for everybody. It's a matter of luck. It's a matter of where the damage is.
Yeah.
But it's mostly luck. I swear to God, like so many things in life are just luck. Like they didn't do anything wrong if you have a worst case.
Right.
Because you have, like I got told over and over, you have so much anger. That's what it is. You have so much anger about it. You have so much fear. You've got to let go of it. And I'm like,
wait. Were they talking to Megan from Felicity, or were they talking to you?
I mean,
I don't see that in you at all.
In terms of this illness, I had so much fear, so much anger.
Sure.
But yeah, I do. But P.S., that's not the reason that I'm sick.
No, of course not.
But that's the way a lot of wellness practitioners do make
I know,
you
but
believe.
then there's blame. Now you're like, oh, I'm
That's
causing
what I'm
this.
saying. That's my point. So look at it with the lens of okay, I didn't do this to myself.
Right.
I'm not the reason that I'm sick.
Right.
And I'm not the reason if I don't get better, if I do. I can be as angry as I want to be, but I'm going to do all the steps that I need to do. I'll go to therapy. I'll do all this stuff.
Yeah.
But like the amount of self-blame that goes on is really toxic to me. So
It's good advice, and I think it's important to. And I know I'm pandering to the title of the show, but it's important to talk about it.
Yeah, and to know that even me saying all of these things and like, I'm okay. Like, I wasn't okay for a long time. So not being okay is okay.
Yeah.
Being terrified is okay. It takes a long time to get, and even now I'm not okay all the time. Like, it still is frustrating.
Yeah.
But you got to keep going in your life. That's all you can do.
Yep.
And of course, and know that no two people are the same. So my experience will be very different than somebody else, especially if they get diagnosed today, because there are so many options.
Yeah.
There didn't used to be any, and people would just like, it's
I know.
terrifying.
And epilepsy too. And it's moving so quickly with AI, with everything.
Yeah.
It's not a rare condition.
It's certainly not. And it's interesting how much more there is now, or there seems to be. I have a friend that I grew up with, and she lived up the street from me and around the corner, and she has MS. Like, that's weird. Like, we grew up on the same street at the same time, and I feel that there may be some environmental causes. I don't know what causes it. I don't have it in my family. I have no idea what the cause is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's very interesting to me, but I really don't
And do you
know the
believe there
answer.
will be a cure?
I hope so.
I
don't
have to
know.
say I believe it. I really do.
I mean, I think that, like, for me, I don't feel any worse than I felt. I don't feel any worse, but I'd still like to correct the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
So I think the gold standard for MS is repairing the myelin sheath.
Mm-hmm.
That's really hard. And that's the researchers that I've talked to. I'm like, can that happen? He's like, that's a big ask. We're trying. We're working on it.
Yeah.
But for right now, like, the medications are stopping progression or slowing progression.
Yeah.
And that's what they do right now.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was awesome. Thank you for talking about it.
Thank you for listening.
Listening about it. Thank you, Nick,
Nick.
for
Thank you.
producing an awesome show. And
Yeah.
also, thank you for your willingness to continue the conversation, because I think it's
Yeah.
going to be great. Well, can I be a guest on your show?
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
Oh, yeah. We'll
talk
put your,
about the
we got to do
Yeah,
a version
it'll
of
be
Mandy.
very similar. You'll just flip chairs. And then
Exactly. We look alike. We always go out for the same stuff. Always. I love you.
I love you too.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Talk About It. Remember, we're all human. We're all dealing with something, and a little compassion every day can change so many lives. Thank you to our special guests. Special thanks to our sponsor, SeizuresAreSigns.com. Thank you to J.J. Abrams for our theme music. Thank you to Nick Marzak for producing, directing, editing, and incidental music. On behalf of my fellow producers, Phil Gattone, Ken Lohenberg, and Nick Marzak, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And if you're not watching, go to talkaboutitonvideo.com to watch these episodes. They're now on video as well. I'm Greg Grunberg. Don't forget to talk about it, and I will see you next time. This podcast is a production of the Talk About It Company.